Hello everybody, welcome to the Season Review podcast. Today we are doing a little bit of season review of Lazio season. I'm always Vittorio Campanile, with me as usual, Alistair McKenzie. Alistair, is it pouring down in Rome today or it's better?
No, summer has arrived just in time. As soon as the football stops, the sun comes out. So yeah, it's been very nice actually the last few days. But yeah, classic, isn't it? As soon as I don't have to walk to the stadium anymore.
Are you complaining about the sun like every Scottish people would do?
No, I'm loving it. I've been desperate for a bit of sunshine. I will see about that in about 2 or 3 weeks' time. It'll probably get a bit too much for me, but at the moment, yeah, having a great time. How about you in Leeds? I can't imagine it's the same.
Nearly the same. But yeah, a little bit of rain in these days, but apart from that, all quite fine. But we have so many things to talk about today, guys. So I hope you have something to drink, you are relaxed, you are seated well, because season review, we have to check all our polls that we had this week, and then we have to go a little bit and give you a little bit of update on the latest news on the transfer market. But Alistair, let's talk about the season review. Let's start from the first poll, I would say. Who was the player of the season? So, the candidates was Francesco Acerbi, Lucas Leiva, Joaquin Correa, Felipe Caicedo. Who was your favorite, Alistair?
Well, yeah, I mean, my vote went to Acerbi, and in the end, he's had a bit of a landslide win. So it was good to be on the winning side with popular opinion, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, first of all, thanks to everyone who took part in these votes and let us know your opinions about it. But yeah, Francesco Acerbi, 66% was people's choice. So was he your choice as well?
I was not surprised to see Acerbi winning, to be honest. I'm a little bit surprised to see Correa and Leiva at the same level for a poll. I was in the side between Acerbi and Correa. I don't know if you had this same indecision. I'm surprised that there's Caicedo there. Leiva, as usual, had a very good season, but I think he was a little bit too injured compared to the first year, and that affected his performance. I think last year we had Milinkovic-Savic, Ciro Immobile and Luis Alberto that are not here, and this, Alistair, showed you a little bit how some of the top players didn't perform as well this season as last year, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very different list from last season. I think if we'd been doing this a year ago and told ourselves, our future selves, that Felipe Caicedo would be on a short list, we would have thought we were joking as well. So it's amazing how much can change in 1 year. But yeah, just to follow up on that, I should have read the results out in full. So Francesco Acerbi won our player of the season poll, 66%. And Lucas Leiva and Correa were joint level in second with 14 each, and then Caicedo had 6. So it was very, very clear. I think it was the clearest of all the polls we did. And I think absolutely 100% deserves. It's been amazing to see not only that he's slotted into a new team so well, but it was how quickly he managed to do that. I mean, with De Vrij leaving, that's quite a big hole in that defence. And don't forget, a player who'd been at the club for 4 years, so everyone was very comfortable with De Vrij in that defence as well. But Acerbi made that transition absolutely painless, and if anything, has been regarded by a lot of us as an improvement, as an upgrade. His performances defensively have been superb, but the other thing he's provided, which I don't think De Vrij really did so much, is the kind of leadership role in the centre of defence. And I think his contribution has been a huge part of the fact that Lazio defensively have improved in 2018-19, and it's about the only part of our game that has.
Let's not forget, when we said Acerbi, I think our listener will remember, I wasn't 100% convinced. I said he would be a very good defender, but I was concerned that he may not be at the same level of De Vrij. Instead, he was much better. And you were saying as a leadership, I thought even as a real defender. If people recall the last year of De Vrij, he often forget his man in the box, which is obviously a very dangerous thing to do. While Acerbi is very good in marking his men, and he had a terrific season. He was the biggest surprise, I would say. I'm a little surprised the gap is so wide between him and Correa, because Correa didn't play that much, didn't score that many goals, but a lot of his goals were very important for Lazio this year.
Well, I think that the Correa thing, you have to take into consideration the fact this is a vote about the entire season, and for me, Correa didn't provide consistently enough over the course of the season to be anywhere near Acerbi in this. For me, Correa finished the season very well the last 2 or 3 months. He's been a standout player. And I think Acerbi actually, in my mind, started the season stronger than he finished it. But over the course of the whole thing, Acerbi's impact on the team has been far greater than Correa's this season for me. And don't forget, he's missed 1 game in all competitions, which is extraordinary. And that was only because he was suspended. Otherwise, he would have played. So that kind of consistency of performance is obviously another aspect that's talked about a lot, but is another aspect of his game that we have to appreciate.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in this modern football where there is a lot of turnover and nobody, plays more than 85% of the matches, 17 some occasion, he has been very, very clever and able to play all those matches. I think Lazio should try to clone Acerbi for the coming season, because have 2 Acerbi on defense would be incredible. Going further, signing of the season, I think here as well there's not that much discussion, right? Because Acerbi has come to Lazio this summer, so there were Acerbi, Correa, Romulo and Badel. I think here there are no doubts, Alistair, right? Who won it?
Yeah, Acerbi again. Interestingly, though, by not as big a margin, 59%, and 40% of people voted for Correa, 1% for Badel, interestingly, and absolutely nobody for Romulo. So I think this poll for me brings up a few quite interesting talking points. Okay, we've just kind of talked about Acerbi, and it's clear from those results that Acerbi and Correa have been the 2 standout players who arrived last summer by far. But it also goes to show the fact that Valon Berisha, a player who we were quite excited about last summer when he joined, the fact that he's not even made this shortlist says a lot. The same for Dermisi, and Milan Badel, another player we thought would make a far greater impact than he has with 1%. I mean, it does go to show not only that Correa and Acerbi have been head and shoulders above the rest in terms of signings, but it also goes to show for me that last summer's transfer market was a bit of a disaster once you go beyond those 2 players.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to agree. We were really hoping that this summer transfer would have been much better. As you were saying, I was especially believing that Berisha would have changed this team. Instead, first part of the season, he didn't play that much. He started having some injury there. And then second part, I think he hardly played, and his season finished like 2 months earlier than all the others. A little bit like Lukaku, whoever saw him. And yes, again, Proto came to be the substitution of Strakosha. We were thinking he would have played much more. Instead, he didn't play that much. But I wouldn't say he didn't respect what we were waiting from him. I mean, he played decent when he had the chance, but he didn't play that much. Durmisi, again, we were hoping to see him much more, but Inzaghi probably didn't trust him enough and was more confident on Lulic. Badel, I said it often, I didn't like him. I think one of the reasons, and about Badel is he played much better when he's near Leva instead of taking the place of Leva. And maybe this is an option we're going to see next year if Badel stays with Lazio. It surprised me that Badel got 1% and not Romulo, who came in January and probably had a better performance than the others. One thing I wanted to say is that I think Correa had more votes because people said, okay, I vote Acerbi player of the season, but then on the signing of the season, instead of repeat myself, I go for Correa.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, it's not the same vote. I suppose you have to, when it comes to signing of the season, you also need to take into consideration factors like the economic terms of the deal, the value for money, and also I'd say the expectations. And yeah, I think like you said, I think Acerbi has probably exceeded expectations. Milan Badel has definitely been way below our expectations. So if anything, I was surprised that there was one person out there who was willing to say that Badel has been a better signing than Acerbi or Correa. But I mean, hey, we needed 4 options on each poll, so otherwise I think it would have been just 2 of them. Romulo again. I mean, yeah, I think he's made a much better impact since coming in January than I expected. So expectations-wise, I think he's overachieved for me. I think he's been a pleasant surprise. But again, there's no way you would consider him a better signing than the other 2.
Alistair, we didn't put in the signing Danilo Cataldi because it's not a new signing. He's a returning player. But I thought Cataldi had a good season. I thought we saw a lot of improvement from him if we compare him in the last season or so he had, away from Lazio, and the last season he had with Lazio where he hardly played. I thought we saw an improved player, a more mature player, and this is really promising because obviously he didn't make it in the young players of the season because he's about 23 years old, but he's still young, and I think the improvement he make this year are very encouraging for next year. I think he's gonna play much more next year, and yeah, maybe he was one of the biggest surprise we had in all the players we signed this summer or came back this summer.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I mean, I think considering the fact that we weren't really sure if he was going to have any future at the club at this point last year, it's been nice that he's been integrated and he's found a role again. And I think he deserves a lot of credit as well for his attitude. He's not been playing very often. He's not been starting many games, but his attitude has always been something that's been complimented by coaching staff and so on. And he's not one who's kicked up a fuss about it or complained or gone to the media and or agitated for a move or any of these things. So that's been nice. He was rewarded with his goal in the derby, obviously, and you saw how much that meant to him. And for me, that was one of the moments of the season. His goal against Spal was one of the best goals I saw live this season. It's a fantastic strike. So yeah, he's not a signing though, but I mean, yeah, it's an interesting point to raise, and I think he could just do with more game time. There's only so much you can do if you're playing so inconsistently. But yeah, I think he's had a nice season.
Let's not forget that the derby he scored with the left foot. He's right-footed, so that was a surprising goal. Let's go to the youngest players of the season, age 23 or under. We had Luis Felipe Ramos, Tomas Strakosha, Sergej Milinkovic-Savic and Pedro Neto. We have a draw here, Mr. Alistair.
We do, Mr. Vittorio. Yeah, I mean, I should say it's age 23 or under at the start of the season. So a couple of them are 24 now. There was no real other way of getting a young player shortlist drawn up if we'd gone much younger than that. But yeah, so the 4 options here were Luis Felipe, Tomas Strakosha, Sergej Milinkovic-Savic and Pedro Neto. And yeah, Strakosha and Milinkovic-Savic have shared the win with 36% each. Then Felipe with 26% and Pedro Neto on 2. So yeah, I think, Vittorio, if it's a draw, then it's up to us to decide who wins this. So what are you leaning towards?
Imagine if we vote to different players, that would be amazing. I would say Tomas Strakosha because he played more consistently throughout the year, while Milinkovic Savic started playing as Milinkovic Savic at the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm glad you've said that. I think, like you say, Milinkovic towards the end of the season was terrific, scored some really important goals. Coppa Italia final, obviously, but the one in Inter as well, don't forget. But yeah, I think the difference for me is that I've seen improvement from Strakosha this season. He's had some really important games. He's basically won points for Lazio single-handedly at times this season. And if you're going on that basis, Strakosha as a young player has shown greater development, greater improvement over the course of the season for me, whereas Milinkovic Savic, I don't think many of us can argue, has improved on where he got to last season. So it's not really, for me, this isn't, it's not, we're not saying Strakosha is a better footballer than Milinkovic Savic. It's really over the course of the season who, for me, has shown the greater kind of promise and development as a youth player, and for me, it's Strakosha.
Yes, I agree. I would say even last year Strakosha played really well. Maybe the biggest difference compared to last year is that last year he made a couple of mistakes, while this season I wouldn't say he was perfect, but I don't remember big mistakes from Tomas Strakosha. And, talking about the goalkeeper, that's a very important improvement. Not allowing stupid goals or making mistakes that can cost a lot to your team, because let's not forget that if a goalkeeper makes a mistake, then it's a goal for the other team. So I think that's very important improvement, especially because young goalkeepers tend to make mistakes, tend to make incredible saves, but at the same time terrible mistakes. And when you stop making mistakes, then it's really when you are improving a lot. So I think Strakosha had a terrific season. So yeah, I would say he's the best age 23 or under.
And what would you say about Luis Felipe's season? Because for me, he's one of the, in terms of young players in the squad, I think Strakosha and Milinkovic Savic have been playing at a really good level over the last couple of seasons, and they've got to that stage where you consider them good Serie A players. Well, more than that in the case of Milinkovic Savic, certainly. With Luis Felipe, I really hope that this would be the season that he could kind of have a breakthrough. But he's kind of suffered from the fact that there's been so much rotation in this defence. He has had spells where he's been the first choice as the kind of right centre-back in the back three. But then all too often he's been dropped again, or he's picked up an injury, or whatever it's been. And for me, he's had some great games, he's had some bad games, and he's just never really been able to get any consistency and nail down a place in the team. And that's been a bit of a frustration for me this season, has been that he's not really kicked on in the way I'd hoped.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we were both very high on him this summer, but the real fact is he didn't play that much. Now, you can blame Inzaghi for rotating the defense, you can blame him to pick a lot of injuries this season because he had, but unfortunately he didn't play as we were hoping, and it's never easy to stay on the bench 1 month or out for 1 month and then have to play a match. So it's very difficult for him. The thing that surprised me that a lot was he played so well in the Coppa Italia with AC Milan. I thought, okay, from now on he's going to be a starter. Instead, after that match, he's been on the bench for a lot. So I don't know what happened between him and Inzaghi, or maybe in the training he wasn't feel 100% fit and Inzaghi didn't want to risk him. But yeah, we were really looking forward to see him playing much more this season than he did. So I don't know what's going to happen next year. I hope he finds more space because he's very young and he is very promising. I really think he can be the best defender for Lazio in the coming years.
Yeah, and he's been moved around a bit as well. From the right to the left to the centre. Inzaghi's tried him out a few times in that central role and moving Acerbi to the left. And I still think that's probably his best position in the centre of the back three. But he's not going to get many chances there with Acerbi playing the way he is. So that's been another kind of difficult part of the season for him. But from everything that's being said and written, it does seem like, along with Acerbi and Radu, he is one of only 3 defenders whose future is absolutely secured for next season. So that they are putting faith in him, and hopefully we can see that improvement next year. But I mean, the other one, is the other nominee. I know he's only got 2%, but Pedro Neto, I think it's worth mentioning because I think it's nice that he is even capable of being nominated, because we've waited so long to see this guy, and Bruno Jordao as well, and we finally had a few opportunities this season. Yes, probably not as many as we would have liked, but it's been nice to see him given a chance in the first team, and obviously he wasn't going to win this award this season. It's too soon for him, but I think it was encouraging to get a glimpse of him, and from what we've seen, it does suggest that he is ready to play first team football and could be a dangerous player.
Absolutely. Now I think the most important question is, will Inzaghi give them a go and make them play more consistently? You said Pedro Neto, but even Bruno Jordao, he played even less than Pedro Neto. Well, after the last match probably he played more, and they both look like players that can play in this division. Obviously, they're not at the level now that they can make a difference, but they need to play. They need to play to show their talent, to improve, to get used to this football. And so I think Lazio have to make a decision. And this is really important because all they play for Lazio, and so Inzaghi decide that from next year they're going to have more space, or they send them on loan. The problem of sending them on loan is that you won't have no guarantee that they will play, and so maybe they're going to waste another year. So it's never easy to decide, but I think that both Pedro Neto and Bruno Jordao are players of a certain level. Obviously, let's not forget how much Lazio paid them. So when I hear rumors of we have to send them, they're going to go on loan, I'm a little bit scared, because maybe it's better if they stay at Rome with Inzaghi, know them very well and know how to use them and how to make them perform better, than send them, I don't know, in a Serie B team that maybe make them play the first 2 matches of the season and then they don't see the field anymore.
Yeah, and the other question is the position as well, especially for Neto, because as a winger, there isn't any obvious place for him in this team, and Inzaghi seems to see him as an alternative to Immobile, or one of the front 2 players, rather than as a wing back, which obviously is a completely different role. And if Inzaghi's going to stick with the 3-5-2, it's quite hard to find a place for Neto where he's really going to have a chance to be given much game time. And then the other thing is with Bobby Adekanye coming in, it's another young winger, so it's a little bit confusing if these wingers are being signed and in the squad in a system with no wingers. So I think a lot with Neto and his potential for improvement next season, or to make an impact next season, might depend on whether or not there's a tactical shift over the summer. And I'd be surprised from what we've seen from Inzaghi over the last 3 years. I'd be pretty surprised, to be honest, to see him change his ideas completely. But who knows?
Yeah, you're right that it would be surprising, but at the same time, as you were pointing out, you have Pedro Neto that is a rising star, and Lazio invested a lot of money on him. You have Adekanye that is a winger. He played both on left and right side. Correa with Sevilla, he played most of the time as a winger. So you have the players for the 4-3-3. I'm convinced that maybe Lazio could be even better with the 4-3-3. So I'm not sure that there won't be a change next season. We're going to see. But the question is, you buy Adekanye and you have Pedro Neto and you keep playing with the 3-5-2, doesn't make that much sense. But, you know, football sometimes is a mystery. You don't understand things, so we're going to see. But yeah, that's a very interesting question for this summer. I think at Alonso we're going to start seeing if there's something different. But let's move to the fourth poll. Performance of the season. We have Lazio Roma 3-0, Inter Lazio 0-1, Milan Lazio 0-1, I thought is the Coppa Italia one, and the Coppa Italia final, Lazio Atalanta 2-0. Alazer, what did you vote?
For me, it was the derby, and yeah, that's won it by an absolute landslide.
Yeah, you weren't the only one.
Yeah, 87%, by far the biggest win out of all the polls. And yeah, I mean, you know, this was kind of harked back to what we were talking about briefly last week. That surprised me when we were coming up with the nominations for these polls. The fact that on the whole, summarising the season, we're pretty disappointed with the way it's ended up, especially in Serie A. But then there have been these real highs, these really great moments throughout the season, and the fact that we can beat both Inter and Milan at San Siro in the season, and combined they don't get more than 2% of people's votes as a performance of the season it says a lot. So yeah, just to run through it, 87% Lazio 3 Roma 0, and then 11% went for the Coppa Italia final, 2% went for the semi-final win away to Milan, and then the Inter game got nothing. So yeah, deserved winner though.
Yes, but you know what's the problem is people read Atalanta Lazio and think, you know, it's an easy final. It's not. Atalanta was the best team this season, the team playing better, top scorer, the team that scored more goals this year in Serie A, and they didn't score none in the Coppa Italia final. Lazio played unbelievable because just a couple of weeks earlier Lazio lost at home against Atalanta 3-1, and it was completely different. So that was a very important match, a very important performance as well. I would say Inter-Lazio. Inter was playing well, Lazio was struggling a little bit. It was a difficult match. So yeah, I think it's funny because Lazio had this season at least good performance against big teams, and then let down, losing against Spal, drawing last second against Sassuolo, and losing against Chievo. That was the match that cost Lazio the Champions League spot, and unbelievable. So Lazio played, we can say, maybe better against the big teams if you exclude Juventus and Napoli than with the small teams at the end of the season.
Which is funny when you consider that up until New Year, one of the big talking points that people wouldn't stop bringing up was that Lazio kept choking in big games and that we were not winning any of these big games, which we hadn't up until that point. Don't forget. So yeah, since the turn of the year, 2019 has been a strange old year because in these big games, Lazio have been showing up. And for me, one of the most impressive things looking at this list of results is the fact that we've kept a clean sheet in all of them. 4 games against Roma, Inter, Milan and Atalanta without conceding a single goal is good going. That's pretty impressive. So yeah, I mean, they've all come this year. Actually, they've all come in the last 2 or 3 months. These results as well, yep, since March. So yeah, it's been strange, and that's been really the most frustrating thing this season is that we've never really got to a point as fans where we've resigned ourselves to being a team who finish 8th in Serie A, because you do see Lazio produce these performances and you know that they are capable of playing at that level, and then at the same time you get those games where they just don't bother, don't turn up at all. The Chievo game being the least forgivable example. But yeah, I think that's been though the one of the best parts of this end to the season for me has been that conversation about Lazio bottling big games. That's stopped happening, and actually there's been such maturity in a lot of these performances as well. And yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised the Derby games won it because it's the joint biggest Derby win of all time for Lazio. So no matter what kind of state Roma were in under Di Francesco at the time, that is still an extraordinary achievement and a deserved winner, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, all these were very important matches, and Lazio played finally as expected. The fifth poll is most improved players. We had Bastos, Felipe Caicedo, Patrick, and Thomas Strakosha. Alistair, who won it?
The big man himself, Felipe Caicedo, 73%. Another big win, this one. And not really a surprise. Second was Strakosha, interestingly, 19%. Then Bastos with 6%, which I was a bit surprised by. I thought he might get better results than that. And then Patrick got 2% as well. So, yeah, what do you think? Caicedo, worthy winner?
Well, you have to give it to Caicedo, considering the second half of the season, right? He was top scorer in 2019. He helped Lazio when Ciro Immobile had started having problems with scoring. As I said before, Thomas Strakosha improvements were clear. He played really well this season, but you could expect from Strakosha that improvement you couldn't from Caicedo compared to last year. Bastos, I thought maybe he deserved more because at the end of the year I thought he played really, really well, what we all was hoping to see from Bastos. And I wonder who voted Patrick because, yeah, he adapted to a new role, but he had up and down there that, you know, I wouldn't say that he improved as a player.
Well, I'd say he'd probably showed us more than we expected after last season, and he did have a couple of pretty good games. But yeah, I mean, Caicedo, when you look at this list, I think when you're talking about most improved, you're talking about, I suppose, most recently what we saw last season and what we saw this season, and it's been quite a heartwarming comeback, to be honest, from Caicedo. I was writing about this last week. You know, at the end of last season, everyone was done with him. Everyone was ready to say goodbye, and they wouldn't have probably been a very affectionate goodbye from a lot of people, because he'd basically become the scapegoat of the failure to qualify for the Champions League to a certain extent after the game in Crotone, the chances he missed in that match to put that top four finish to bed. And the fact that he's managed to turn this around, and more or less because of his attitude, you know, that's the thing that got the fans on his side first. I mean, the fans had come back around on his side before he started scoring all these goals, and at the turn of the year, he was already a popular player because he's just a great professional, and he's never complained about the positions he's been in. He's really offered something different this season. He's still not a Vice Immobile, but he has shown that he offers something different in an attacking sense to the rest of the Lazio players, and he's had one of the most prolific seasons of his career. So yeah, I mean, Caicedo, it's been a real journey with Caicedo this season, and it still looks like there's a chance of him leaving. But I think, you know, that's the thing, is that if he does leave this summer, it will be with the best wishes of everyone, and I think everyone will be saying very nice things about him, which wouldn't have been the case a year ago.
Yes, I think he will leave, and fans maybe would regret him. Even though if Wesley arrive, I think that's the best solution for Lazio. But yeah, he improved a lot. I still believe that big part because Lazio didn't reach the Champions League last year is because he missed that unbelievable chance against Crotone. But you never know what would have happened afterwards. So, but this year definitely he played much better, and he helped Lazio in a tough moment. So definitely he was the most improved player of the year. I thought I voted Caicedo as well. So I think he deserved it. He played really, really well. Maybe you could add Danilo Cataldi in this conversation as well. As I said before, he improved a lot compared to the last year, but probably from Caicedo you wouldn't know, hoping for that much, and his performance this year, especially in 2019, was great. So I think he deserved it. Now let's go to the sixth poll, the worst one, I would say. Flop of the season. We have Valon Berisha, Martin Cáceres, Wallace, and Jordan Lukaku. Alistair, who won it?
And there could have been more on this list.
Absolutely.
We've had a few other suggestions. Some people wrote Risa Dormisi, Luis Alberto was suggested as well. So, yeah, it was very close actually. This Wallace has ended up winning it, 35%, but 1% behind him on 34 is Valon Berisha. Then Jordan Lukaku in third with 20%, and then finally Cáceres with 11%. But yeah, I mean, this was probably the hardest one to draw up a nominations list for, because you could have an argument for, like people suggested, Tuaz Alberto or Dermisi. You could also even have an argument for guys who we expect more from, like Immobile, like Milinkovic-Savic, who didn't play at that level. So yeah, unfortunately... There were a few contenders for this one. Wallace, I don't know. I would disagree with that. He didn't get my vote because I think everyone's sick of him. And the Atalanta defeat, the 3-1 defeat, was terrible. Don't get me wrong. That was an awful performance. And he single-handedly lost the game for us. And as a result, single-handedly took us completely out of the Champions League race. But actually, Wallace has had some decent performances this season. Had a very good game against Juventus right at the start of the year. Was starting a lot of games at the start of the season and wasn't doing too badly in a lot of them as well. But I think because this Atalanta performance is so fresh in the mind, that will have swayed a lot of people's opinion, I think. I don't think he's had a good season. I hope we sell him. I think we're done with him. But I still think that for me, Berisha, Lukaku, these guys were more disappointing because they didn't really contribute anything positive to the season.
Well, Berisha started playing quite well. I mean, I remember Parma's match where he came in and changed the match. You can see that Berisha can play really good football. He didn't play that much this year, because Inzaghi didn't trust him and he got injured often. So he's a disappointment. Yes, absolutely, because we were all hoping more from him. But he didn't play. He got injured. And, the same thing is for Jordan Lukaku. He pretty much didn't play a match this season. He was always injured. Even last year, to be honest, Lukaku didn't convince. He started well, and then the knee started bothering him, and we didn't see the normal Lukaku. Same thing you can say about Cáceres. Again, you were hoping to see more playtime for Cáceres, and still he didn't play that much. In fact, in January he left and went to Juventus, where he didn't convince there as well. So I think this was really tough. I agree what you said with Wallace, but the problem is it's not the first big mistakes he make. And again, it was a costly mistake, but you could add in the mix Durmisi, who we were hoping to see much more and didn't play that much, didn't play well when he had the chance. Badel as well is another one who can you put in here. Same thing, you could add Milinkovic-Savic if you forget the last month or so. He didn't play that well as well. So I think really, here we were limited by Twitter, because otherwise we could easily add other 3 or 4 players.
Yeah, exactly, which is a bit of a shame. I think I just wanted to mention Cáceres as well as an option, because I think that has been a real disappointment to me. When he came in last January, we were both saying the same thing, which is that it seemed like a very smart signing, obviously economically not pushing the club much, but a player with great experience in Serie A and internationally, a player who can operate in all sorts of different roles. And yeah, it never happened for him at Lazio, and kind of expected a lot better, to be honest. Expected him to, the start of this season, to make one of those positions his own, in a way that he just never did. He just never really seemed entirely committed to the cause while he was in Rome. And as soon as he got back to Juve, it's a bit strange, a player who's not really managed to make much of an impact at Lazio and goes up to Juve and he's starting in the Champions League, and bit of a strange situation. But I think overall, flop of the season would be maybe a bit harsh on him because he was only there for 6 months, and he wasn't a complete disaster. He just wasn't what we'd hoped for. But as a transfer, it was a real disappointment, I think, because I expected a lot more than what we got from him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody did, and that's why you can put him as a disappointment, because you were expecting much more from him, especially after how he was playing at Verona, right? He was playing well, so we were all believing that he would come here and make the difference, which he didn't. And then finally, the last award is, if you could change one thing this summer ahead of the next season, what would it be? Sign a Vice Immobile, replace Simone Inzaghi, sign a new wing-back, sign a new centre-back. Alistair, who won it?
Yeah, it was another close one. The sign a new wing-back option came out on top, 37%, but only just ahead of signing a new centre-back, which was on 35%. Then Vice Immobile with 15%, and finally replace Simone Inzaghi was the choice of 13% of people. And it's probably just as well that option didn't come out on top, given what's happened over the last couple of days. But yeah, I mean, that was actually what I voted for as well.
Replace Simone Inzaghi?
No, sorry, the wing-back. I think we need all these things in terms of the signings. I think we need the Vice Immobile wing-back and the centre-back as a minimum. But I thought it was it's an interesting thing to see gauge people's opinions on what is the one priority if you had to name one. And I think that the wing-back positions have been a point of real weakness this season for me, and it's interesting to see that is what a lot of people prioritise. I expected actually a lot more people would say the Vice Immobile, but maybe Caicedo's just impressed enough people by now that that's gone further down. What did you vote for on this one?
I wanted to vote everyone except replace Simone Inzaghi. I think at the end of the day, the biggest problem with Lazio at the moment is the wing-back, because Lulic is getting older. Marusic didn't convince. Romolo is an okay player, it's not a Champions League player. Durmisi didn't convince. So Lazio hasn't got that many options now at the moment there. So as we said, Caicedo played well the last part of the season. He's not a Vice Immobile, but he can play there. A centre back, as we said, Bastos was surprisingly good. Ramos will play more, so it's not an emergency situation there. So at the moment, I think the top priority is the wing back. Now it's funny because it looks like Lazio have closed the deal with Wesley, so the Vice Immobile is coming. So that's one important thing. But there are not big news about the wing back. Lazzari, who should have been the top priority, I think we all agree about that. It's been linked to Napoli. So I don't know if Lazio is really chasing someone there. I hope they are, but I think this should be the top priority now, especially if we sign Wesley.
Well, Lazzari's been linked with just about everyone by now. Yeah. And then the other one is Faris, his teammate, who plays on the left side at Spal, and he's another guy who's constantly being talked about as a target for Lazio. The Wesley thing, I hope you're right. I still don't like to really put much faith in these things until I see it happen, but we'll see. I think he would be a terrific signing, actually, if that comes off. But yeah, I think the wing-back positions, you need quality in those roles. They need to be able to contribute to both phases, attack and defense. And if you've got players in those roles who are weak at even one of those two aspects, then basically the entire tactical model falls apart quite quickly. I think that Lulic's days as a first choice left wing back, in my mind, should be numbered by now, because he's a great player to have in the squad. He's the club captain and so on, and he means a lot to the fans. But I don't think he is getting older. There's no two ways about that. And I don't think he's the quality of player that's going to get us to the Champions League. I think he'd be a very, very valuable player as a squad player, but I don't really think he should be starting every single match in the way that he has been recently. And Marasic, it's quite hard to know what to make of Marasic now, because he had a very good debut season. This season, not so much. And we don't really know who the real Marasic is, I suppose, at this point. I think that in terms of improving the overall quality of the squad and turning this team from one that is on the fringes of the Champions League race into one that finishes in the top four, I think that has to be a massive priority in the market. And yeah, like you say, I would have liked to, I don't know, see some slightly more concrete stories about possible signings. But I think we can only wait. Surely this is going to be a big priority on Inzaghi's list of demands that he's been having in these talks over the last few days.
Yeah, because the key of the 3-5-2 are the wingers. So if you keep playing with the 3-5-2, you have to have very good wingers. Otherwise, it's very difficult to perform as well. Or you have Luis Alberto Milinkovic-Savic playing again like last year, or otherwise Lazio will keep struggling. And maybe this fact that we don't hear a lot of rumors about the players playing at the wing side means that really Inzaghi is changing and he's switching to a 4-3-3. Again, as we said, if Lazio is playing with a 4-3-3, I think we don't need wingers, because we have Correa, Neto, Adekanye that can play on front, and you have Radu, Patrick. Well, Patrick, I hope we change him, but we have some option there, and then we need a left back or right back to be added to the mix, not a winger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I still think just generally the whole squad needs a real refreshment this summer. There are a few players who are getting older. There are a few players who are nothing more than squad men. It's hard to imagine that there's going to be an incredible improvement in Serie A next season unless they do invest in the market. I guess this will keep us busy throughout the summer talking about all this stuff, so we don't need to go into it in agonising detail while there's not an awful lot happening in that regard. But I think Adekanye for a start is quite an interesting one, just because it's it's a young player, but also it's like we've already said, it's a guy who plays in a role that doesn't exist in this system. So I wonder if that's a hint or if that's just some bad communication between the sporting director and his coach.
Or maybe they're convinced that he can play close to Ciro Immobile in a 3-5-2. We don't know.
Yeah.
But Alistair, after all this poll, what would be your vote for Lazio season?
It's a really hard. I mean, how are we grading it? Are we doing it out of 10?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really hard season to come up with a number 4, just because you've got the real disappointment of the league season, but then the Coppa Italia was absolutely brilliant. So I think it's kind of sitting on the fence. I'd probably go for 7, because I think you have to value winning a trophy as being a terrific achievement, and it was a terrific achievement, and it was a very, very good run. And Lazio's best performances of the season, really, most of them came in that competition. And it's another it's another trophy, and it's gone and got us European qualification. So even though 8th place in the league is not something any of us would have signed up for at the start, we have still managed to end up in Europe next season at least, and with a trophy in the bag. So you can't help but be disappointed, but at the same time, I think it would be too harsh to consider the entire campaign a failure as a result of that. So, yeah, for me, 7, I would say.
I agree with the Coppa Italia. It was unbelievable. Let's not forget that Lazio defense has been terrible in Serie A, but in Coppa Italia, Inter, Milan, and Atalanta, they score only once on a penalty, and it was a dodgy penalty at the last second. So Lazio played really well in Coppa Italia. I thought in Serie A, there were big ups, winning the derby, beating Inter at Milan, but even bad performance, terrible performance like Chievo, Sassuolo, and so on. Europe League, we could have done better. I thought that we played against Sevilla in a tough situation with a lot of injured players, and that affected the performance. Overall, something between 6 and 7, because you won a title and you're going back to Europe, so it cannot be a bad season. But I thought this team could have done better, and I think there are mistakes from the club, the manager, and the players. So you could really have done better this season. But overall, 6.5, something like that should be my grading.
Right, should we get on to Inzaghi?
Absolutely. So it was funny because yesterday, Saturday, if you're listening in the live during the live, I was reaching out to some of my colleagues at Goal and etc. to have some news about Simone Inzaghi, and pretty much they all confirmed me that there was no interest from Juventus, and Inzaghi have seen that and was finding a deal with Lotito, and the news break out. So I was anticipated by everybody. But yeah, it looks like Inzaghi have decided to stay with Lazio. Lotito is offering a new contract. The most important part is that it looks like Inzaghi have asked for guarantee in this transfer market. So it would be really important to see if Lotito and Tare will do what Inzaghi asked and build a team that's even stronger than this year. But to Monday or Tuesday, he's going to sign the new contract. They found the deal, but they're going to put it on paper this week.
Yeah, which for me is fantastic news. I know that we've got at least 13% of our listeners who will disagree with that. But yeah, I think it's really encouraging for me to see him stay on. And actually, it's all of this in a way might work out for the best in a strange way, because it allows Inzaghi to make these demands, like you say. It allows him to basically get more power than he had before, to demand more players, to say, it's unreasonable to say we should be in the Champions League if we're not going to improve this squad. And I think actually all of this happening in Lotito's willingness to accept what's been said in these meetings, and his hope of keeping Inzaghi at the club could end up being a reason that we end up having a better mercato than we did last summer, or that a bit more money is spent, or that they're a bit more ambitious with their targets, or whatever it is. I hope so. Anyway, it's hard to say at this point, but I mean, I would find it amazing for them to go through all of this and then not deliver on promises that have been made to Inzaghi.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the biggest question is the relationship ruined after this, or they are mature and they can cope with it and improve from that? That's my biggest fear.
I don't think that the relationship will have been ruined by it. I mean, it sounds like Iglitare played a key part in this, and he was a mediator between the two, between Lotito and Inzaghi, so that certainly helps. I think the Lotito-Inzaghi relationship, we all know, is quite a stormy one at times anyway, but they are, they know each other extremely well and have been working together for a long time now. And I don't think Lotito wants that to end, has any intention of ending that if he can. So really, for me, it's more about how Inzaghi feels about the whole thing, because if he's let down in the market, or if he doesn't feel like he's backed, or if Lotito comes out and criticises him to the media again next season in the same way he did this season, then he's probably going to decide that he's had enough sooner or later. I mean, that's, in my mind, the way that if this ends, that's probably how it's likely to end, is by Inzaghi finally having it with Lotito rather than the other way around.
And the other thing, Alistair, is really the option available for Lazio weren't great. I'm not convinced that Zerbi is a great manager. And Sinisa Mihajlovic is a great Lazio fan, but when he had the big team, he didn't perform. I'm thinking about AC Milan. So it would always be a risk to get a substitute of Simone Inzaghi, especially I'm not convinced at all from De Zerbi. So the names that were linked, Gattuso. I rate him a great man, a great sportsman, but as a manager, I don't think he's that good at all. So, I would thought that would be a downgrade compared to Simone Inzaghi.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way, and actually, it's for me that's kind of the critical thing has been that there isn't really anyone out there who at the moment you'd say is attainable for Lazio who would be an upgrade on Inzaghi. So even those of you who I know there are a fair few of our listeners who aren't Inzaghi fans and would prefer that he did leave. It's quite. I mean, we're willing to listen if you have a suggestion for who would be an upgrade on Inzaghi that the club could get this summer. It'd be interesting to hear that, because I haven't looked at any of these names that have been linked with the club and thought that will improve immediately from hiring them. So, yeah, I think the best case scenario all round is that he stays on. He's given more backing, and promises are made to actually make this team a Champions League team once and for all, rather than just talking about it and hoping it happens with a Europa League style team.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to see if this means that Milinkovic-Savic, Luis Alberto will stay, or that Inzaghi will have the guarantee that if they leave, they're going to be replaced by very good players. That's going to be interesting, because we know how much Inzaghi rated Luis Alberto and Milinkovic-Savic, so maybe in this discussion he asks Lotito to keep them at least another year.
Yeah, and there are two interesting cases for this summer as well. I mean, we kind of talked about that briefly before last week, I think it was, but like it's quite hard to say who's going to come in and buy them and put up with the demands that the club are going to make for them. And Milinkovic-Savic, Juventus seems the obvious one, but then a lot of that will depend on who they get in as a coach and how they feel about that as well, and whether that fits in. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting market, because with Alberto and Milinkovic-Savic, two talented players but not coming off their best seasons, and the club are Lotito's likely to still demand big fees for these guys, but how many clubs out there will be willing to meet those demands after they've had fairly indifferent seasons? It's I think that's probably going to be one of the big ongoing discussions we have this summer, I'm afraid.
As usual.
Yeah,
we're going to see. We also have to see if Lotito accept a lower offer for them, and if Milinkovic-Savic or Luis Alberto demand to leave. That would be the key. But at the moment, they didn't ask, and so we're going to see what happens. Obviously, a lot of Lazio players have been linked. Strakosha to the Premier League, Maruic to the Bundesliga, and other players as well. So it's going to be a long summer. I think it's going to be a very different summer, because I think Milan and Roma won't be able to do a big transfer market this season. So I think Inter is going to prove But apart from that, Lazio has a really big chance. So we're gonna see if they're gonna take it and do a big transfer market, because they know they can reach a Champions League this year. What do you think about it, Alistair?
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be one of the most interesting markets for a while. But I mean, obviously, you've got a lot of clubs replacing coaches this summer. That's a big turnaround. Conte arriving at Inter. Don't know why that's going to happen. Don't know who Roma or Milan are going to end up bringing in. Obviously, a lot of FFP sanctions being thrown around. A lot of clubs having to be very careful in the way that they spend their money, if they can at all. So, I mean, this is when you realise the benefits of Lazio's financial stability, I suppose, as we don't have to really deal with any of these conversations very often. And I wonder if this could actually be a pretty crucial season ahead for Lazio, where a lot of our rivals for these places are in transition, and a lot of them aren't going to have the spending power that maybe they had before. So, it could be the time to make a big statement.
Yep, I think it's going to be a very important summer. Let's hope that Inzaghi will get the guarantee that the team will improve and top players won't be sold. Again, I think it's good for Lazio that Inzaghi is there. It's good for Lazio if Inzaghi gets more powers, especially in the transfer market. But Alistair, I think we can wrap it up here. I think it was a good podcast. We talk about the season review. Guys, tell us if you agree with us, with our votes and with our judgment of the season. And remember, as usual, that you can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, subscribe to our podcast on Spreaker, on Spotify, on iTunes. And if you want to support us, we have our Patreon page. So thank you again, Alistair. I think we're going to talk again next week about the latest news of transfer market, hopefully, and the new contract of Simone Inzaghi.
Yep, speak to you then.
Bye, guys. Thank you very much.
Come on, you eagles, there's no time to fear. Up there's an angel watching us so dear.